Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Red Earth Production Studios. My name is Brian French, and we have a new show for you here, the YBMcast with Matt and Brian. Matt Shadow here, joining me on the set. Matt?
Thanks, Brian. Happy to be here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got some fun stuff coming up, folks. We wanted to take a few minutes here to kind of talk a little bit about what the show is going to be about, what the podcast is going to be about, what we're going to be discussing over hopefully a long time. We hope you tune in and join in the conversation because we believe it's going to be a lot of fun and interesting and informative. And later on in today's show, just for an example, we're going to have Kenny, and it is pronounced Seifert. I was mispronouncing it.
Kenny Seifert
From Misha, and you can't say Misha.
It's Misha.
It is Misha.
What happens if you say Misha? Did he yell at you?
I don't know.
Because I think a lot of people say Misha.
I said Misha all the time. But I heard a video on their website, and everybody said Misha.
Really?
I never knew that.
Nah, I didn't either.
See?
Look at that. Learn something new every day.
There you go. That's what we're here for, folks, to be informative. So first and foremost, Matt came to me when we did when we were talking after we did a show together, and we discussed this. And Matt, what were your thoughts when we discussed? You were very engaged in talking about the recruiting process and things like that. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts on this.
Well, kind of jokingly, not jokingly, I said to you, we should do a podcast because I don't think a podcast is ever done or is done locally for sure, but in the Midwest in general to discuss teams, players, outside of, a couple tournament organizations. They do their own podcast based on the people that show up to their events, but starting something, locally, statewide, and actually getting into the players, getting into the high school players in the state of Missouri, and kind of following them, seeing where they go, what they do.
Right.
I think it's interesting because, some of these kids are really, really good ball players and, they play pro ball, and you look down the road and say, we talked about this kid or talked about that kid. And I think just the talent pool alone in Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Columbia, Cape, just Missouri in general.
Right.
So
I do think that's a big part of that. Just when you look around at the level of competition, the level of talent, everybody talks about the South, the West Coast. We understand those things.
There is a lot of talent there.
There is. We get that. But I think a lot of talent is overlooked in these middle states here. And when you see youth baseball and you see a lot of these kids that are going to the major leagues year after year, drafted, playing at a high level, getting to the major leagues. I think it's very interesting and that's one of the reasons I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We want to bring that into scope. And one of the focuses we're going to be working towards is we wanted to narrow it into that 13U to 18U range, right?
Yeah, for the well, technically they're all youth, but the youth side, getting into 13, 14, going any younger than that, I think is a recipe for disaster. But 13, 14 is normally when they start to really get into some of the bigger events, the perfect game events, PBR events, stuff like that.
And we discussed this at length and looking at these things. And we'll tell you honestly, folks, I'm going to tell you right up front, that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, have some fun, for crying out loud. Enjoy the game. That doesn't mean you can't be competitive or that your team isn't good or those things or the players aren't there. But it is still just a game, right?
Yeah. You got to think you can take, let's take a 16, 17-year-old group that maybe stayed together since they were 12, 13, which is very rare. It doesn't happen a lot. But some of the better kids on that team stopped playing ball around 13 years old or 14 years old or maybe even 12.
Right.
And some of them were together since they were 9, 10 years old. So, I mean, those ages, it's learn, have fun. And, I mean, I think the most important part for them is learning the game and enjoying being around their friends, their other kids, and just make sure you're with somebody that's teaching you something.
That's key. You know, we will be talking about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We will be talking about those age groups, but it won't be in that recruiting level, that thought process. We want it to be fun. We want it to be enjoyable. We'll talk about teams that we believe are good and kids that we believe are good, but not, I think some of the rankings maybe, gets a little carried away, but it's good to rank. I don't think there's any problem with you're looking at all these major teams, and we have, how many teams are considered themselves or classified as a major team. When you start really looking at that across all platforms, from Game 7 to USSSA to GMB to, whatever other organization you have, how many are truly classified as a major team? And to be that, right?
Yeah. And to clarify, some people, especially when you get in the Midwest, they think 13, 14, that, my kid's not getting recruited. If you're good at 14U, if you're 8th grade about to go into your freshman year, especially in the South, you get offers. I mean, I know kids that are currently at LSU that verbally committed at 14 years old.
Really?
So it's rare in the Midwest because you're not seen by an LSU all the time.
Right.
But some of those kids at a certain point, they are, hey, I'm going to go play in 3 or 4 events with these teams to see where I'm at. If you think about it, it's crazy, but it's getting younger and younger and younger, which is not good. But at least in my mind, it's not good. But that's a whole nother story.
The other thing that we want to do with the show is bring in guests. And as we said, as we opened, Kenny Seifert's going to be with us. And our next show, which will be 2 weeks from today, we're going to have Tim Canavan.
Yeah.
From Lindenwood. Now,
correct. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Tim.
Well, Tim's local guy went to he coached at MICDS, won a state title there, and then just recently left MICDS to go to Lindenwood. So it'll be interesting to see his take in giving everybody else's take on what he thinks on college recruiting, especially right now. And since he was a high school coach, he sees both sides. Okay, as a high school coach, I'm trying to promote my kids to college coaches, and now I'm a college coach trying to recruit high school kids. So just, what he looks for, pick his brain, what he looks for in the kids, and whether it's on the field, off the field.
Right.
In the classroom, stuff like that.
And so we're looking at those types of guests. This is what we want to bring to the table, have those discussions, bring in information that's interesting. Shortly after that next show, we've got Eric Goff from Fort Zumwalt West will be joining us. We're going to be bringing Coach Tony Perkins on. We're going to be talking rankings, high school rankings. And, as we finish up here, in this segment before we get to Kenny, we've been talking about the 2019-2020 season that didn't happen, basically, right? And
yes.
we want to kind of give you a little bit of recap here, because that season kind of fell off, and that's one of the things that we want to talk with, what's coming up. What is 2021 going to look like? Are we going to get there? And I think it's going to be interesting. But we want to kind of give a recap on some of the schools from – that was 2019, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, 2019 was the last – 2018, 2019 was the last, I would say, state titles that we have. So, Class 5, DeSmet. So DeSmet is technically still defending champion.
Yeah.
You've got, St. Francis Borgia, and you get to 4A, Blair Oaks 3A, getting some of the smaller schools, Ellington at 2A, and St. Elizabeth at 1A. Most people really know the big schools, but 5A 2019, you had Marquette, Willard, DeSmet, and Staley in the Final Four. And then you look at the preseason rankings, which is March 18th, 2020. Willard was preseason number 1. Marquette was number 2. Staley was at 7. So, I mean, those guys were bringing back some players. The only one that wasn't was the defending champion of
DeSmet wasn't in the top 10?
No.
Wow.
No. But, you know, the normals, you got Vianney, who is always poised to have good seasons. CBC, Francis Howell was in there. And then Rockbridge, Lee Summit West, Liberty in Kansas City, and some others. You've got SLU, Kickapoo, Nixa. But I think it's going to be interesting because a lot of this 21 season, you're going off of juniors and sophomores.
Yeah.
So let's take Willard, for example. What does Willard have coming back? Because in 19, they were in the Final Four, and then 20. They were number 1.
Right.
So,
but what about how many seniors did they lose?
We'll get into what they have coming in.
Right.
You're getting into the 22 class from the sophomores. Same with, like Francis Howell. Same with, DeSmet, because when DeSmet won, I mean, they were a sleeper. I mean, they were under 500.
Yeah. Right.
And they hot at the right time.
That's, I think, the most interesting part of it. So was it just good? They just got on a roll. You got to have good players to win. I don't care what you say, but
yes.
And was it injuries and those types of factors? But I think it's we'll be able to see a little bit more rankings. I was talking with Coach Perkins. Rankings will be coming out in January. I think he said third week in January. So we got a little ways to go here, and we want to look at and talk with these coaches, especially, we're hoping to get some of these guys on and talk to them about their programs. What do they look like? How many seniors? And, even some of these seniors coming back, how much work have they got put in? And, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting season. It really is. You might see a sleeper jump up that you didn't even think about. Somebody come in that nobody knew about because of these things. That's just my opinion there. I think that'll be interesting.
Well, yeah, and the people doing the rankings, I mean, honestly, what do they know?
Right?
I mean, they're going to have to do some serious research to find out without having a season, because it's not like you're projecting, say Lafayette has talent, but, what if they had 4 kids that were sophomores that were going to play varsity? Or they did.
Yeah.
They got some games in 2020, but...
And that's, I'm hoping, I'm going to be reaching out to Coach Perkins, and if you're watching, Coach, we would love to get you on the show and talk to you about how do the rankings come in? What's the criteria? What do we look at? What builds the ranking system in the state of Missouri? If people just don't know, I think it'd be interesting to find out just on that level what goes into the rankings, who's voting, all that sort of thing. So we're looking forward to that stuff as well. But, so, hey, folks, we got a lot of stuff coming. And, as we're talking about the 2021 season of baseball coming up, we are getting ready to bring in Kenny Seifert from MSHSAA. I'll say it right this time, MSHSAA, he's the director of officials. He's the assistant executive director. He does a lot of stuff for the program, and we're looking forward to him to him coming on and talking. So we'll be right back after this break. All right, everybody, we're back, and today, as we said, we've got Mr. Kenny Seifert, which I was pronouncing your name wrong there, Kenny, so I'm very sorry about that. But I saw you on a video, and I said, oh, I'm mispronouncing the man's name. I'm sorry. Hate to do that. Hey, welcome into the show. You are actually the inaugural guest on this new podcast, so we appreciate you being with us.
Really? Well, I'm honored. I appreciate that very much. And I'll give you a quick little history as to why at least half of the people in the free world pronounces my name the other way. So when you really think about it, it's not a very common name.
Right.
And back in the 90s, the only name anyone would have ever been had access to visibly would have been the coach of the 49ers, George Seifert.
That's right.
And so most people make their connection because it's the only time they've ever seen a last name spelled that way. So I want you to know that you're in the majority, and that majority is, most people say Seifert, but it is Seifert. The E is silent, and I don't come from the George Seifert family, unfortunately, and so here I am.
Well, that's all right, man. I appreciate you being with us. Thank you very much. So we want to start off here. I'm sure you guys have had just quite the experience with all the stuff going on with COVID and whatnot and the schools. And tell us a little bit about what 2020 was like as you guys were dealing with that.
Well, obviously challenging, to say the least. Challenging because everything is always moving. I think that's the biggest challenge that we've had. I tell groups of people all the time when they ask me a question, my answer is, as I stand in front of you right here, right now, this is my answer. Please understand, when I walk away, that answer could change. And I think that's been the biggest challenge, because at the High School Activities Association, obviously we run championships, and our championships are successful, predicated on the fact that it's organized and we have pieces in place. Well, when those pieces are constantly moving, it becomes a challenge. It becomes a challenge from the amount of hours that we have to spend always redoing and then redoing and then redoing and redoing. And so that becomes the biggest challenge. And then the communication piece, obviously, because as things move, then you have to communicate with everyone that's involved, from school administrators to coaches to the kids on the team. They have to let their fans know what's the situation. How many people can we have attend this contest? Is there a restriction of your roster? Just a lot of variables. How's the postseason going to be structured? Who's all in? How's the districts going to line up? What about the classification process? We don't know if we're going to play or not. You could imagine. And so the challenge is just the constant moving parts, but everyone wants us to latch on and lock in. And so you got to find that balance.
Kenny, Matt, Shadow, again, thanks for coming on. Hit a point that you mentioned, and I can relate to you on this. I own a baseball, softball club, and I always told the parents, I said, look, I'm sending you an email. It has all the information that I know to this day, to this time, to this second. And in the middle of me sending an email, I have to stop, redo part of it because something changed. And you're like, where do I go with this? So at the end of every email, just like the end of every conversation, you say, this is what I know as of this getting sent or me saying this at the moment. And
right.
I feel for you, man. It's frustrating because people come back to me, people come back to you, and they're like, well, you didn't tell me this. And you're like, I found out 10 minutes after I talked to you or sent this to you. Right. It's a no-win situation. You're in a no-win situation.
Right. So, and you know what's funny about that, guys, is when we started the fall, I think the majority of the people out there were so incredibly appreciative that we were even that the kids even had a chance, that they were okay to look past that. It didn't bother them too much.
Yeah.
But we all know that we have a tendency to go back to our normal place again. Right. And that normal place gets to be, I want this, I want that, I want it right now. You didn't tell me this. And so as the kindness and the newness wore off from late August and early September, just know that here in the month of November, we're pretty much back to normal again. And you know what normal is, and that is people want what they want. And they want it right now. And But we're not at that point right now. I give you an example. We had 133 Week 10 football games, and obviously I'm talking a little football right now because I signed the Crews to the playoffs. Out of 133 games, we had 18 forfeits, 18 cancellations of teams that just advanced to the next round because of COVID situations within their team. This past Friday night, we had 96 district semifinal contests. 5 of those ended up being forfeits. This week are the district finals, and we know we're getting deeper now. So each game takes on a little bit more significant meaning. And we've already had actually one in the St. Louis area that is going to be a forfeit. And that's not easy to accept for communities, but it causes a lot of changes on our ends. You know, who advances, we got to notify the officiating crews, all the workers, things like that. So it is challenging, but hey, it's at least we have that opportunity and we're thankful for it.
That's right. That's right. And, with that being said, we're talking about the baseball season 2021. And I know just in your conversation there, what is that going to look like? How does that communication stay, moving forward? Who are you communicating with? Is it the districts? Is it the actual activity directors themselves, the principals? What's the process here?
That's a great question. Very multifaceted there. Dr. Erhan, our executive director, obviously is going to be in a lot of communication with probably the superintendent level of a district. Mm-hmm. Myself and Lou Mazzocco, who's the director of baseball, we're going to be in communication with a lot of the athletic directors within our membership schools. And what is so unique about that question that you just asked is 2 months ago, I'm receiving contact from wrestling coaches or athletic directors about, hey, Kenny, what do you think about wrestling this year? I said, well, right now, I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen tomorrow. So in all fairness, we just aren't having those conversations because wrestling in a normal year is right around the corner. But in the world we're living in right now, it is so far away that we can't even have those discussions because we're trying to fight through the trees right now with what's in front of us. Baseball kind of falls under that same category. People are going to say, hey, what do you think about baseball? Gentlemen, in all honesty, it's just not a conversation we're having right now because you can imagine with basketball and wrestling practice starting just a week ago today, what questions we're fielding on that end. Are we going to be able to wrestle? What about basketball? What happens if our point guard gets COVID? Well, you can't separate your point guards from your wings in basketball practice like you can your linemen and your receivers in football. So there are challenges there. So what do we think is going to happen? Boy, that's a hard forecast. I just know that our office's philosophy has always been and will continue to be, we're going to do everything that we can as long as it fits within the guidelines of health departments locally and at the state level. We want to give kids opportunities because COVID is no joke. It's a real situation, and there are ramifications from it. But there are also ramifications from young people mentally, psychologically, and emotionally if they are not provided the opportunity to do the things that they love. The problem is, how do you find that balance? Because everyone's view of where that needle should be is at a different place. But we are entrusted and we're put in the position where we just think it's really, really important that we're doing everything that we can to give kids opportunities.
It's hard to keep the politics out of it, isn't it, Kenny?
Very hard.
Yeah.
Because like we said, everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to take a position. And our position has always been be open-minded, be considerate of other people. Not everybody looks at things exactly the same way. And in a broader scheme of things, what can we do that is safe, number one, but also provides opportunities while being safe? Anybody who attended our cross-country state championships this past weekend would have been amazed at how we were able to pull that off. But it takes a village to pull that off. And so everyone here is working really, really hard to do those things.
So just, I'm sorry, I had to put my glass on so I could see. With that, looking at that scenario, then we're talking, there isn't really any answers. And I respect that and I understand. So, and this is why we wanted to bring you on and talk about these things, because I think it's a very interesting thought process and how people look at it. You're going to have to look at your state and local, or not state, we're in the same state, but your local health organization, and really kind of to understand how you guys, how Misha is going to progress. Would that be an honest assessment?
You hit the nail right on the head. Exactly. Because, and early, when we started fall sports, people were wanting to know what are our guidelines? What restrictions are you going to put out? And our guidelines were very basic, especially from an officiating standpoint. We had a lot of permissible. This is permissible. You can do this. You can do. The reason we didn't mandate a lot is because what is mandated in one county in one part of the state, in no way, shape, or form, it may not be mandated in another county. And so when you start mandating things, we all know the word that comes after mandating is policing. So if you mandate something, you have to be able to police it, right? Well, we cannot police 7,500 officials, whether they are wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, whether they are social distancing. It's not possible. And so we allowed things to be permissible. At the same time, our communication was make sure that you are doing what your local health department guidelines mandate that you do. And that allowed certain parts of the state to participate. Some had to come along a little bit later. Obviously, there's a difference there, but we wanted to give kids opportunities. And yes, we fielded a question: how can you let a softball team in Chillicothe, Missouri? How can you let them play softball when the softball team at Pattonville High School can't? Well, our philosophy was, why would we punish the kids from Chillicothe who are able to play just because someone 260 miles away can't play? And so, was it fair? No, but it gave kids opportunities that the opportunity existed. And that's kind of where our stance was. And we will continue to do that all the way through.
Going off of that, so stating that, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, which I think people are pretty used to that because it's the life we're in. In regards to schedules, and fill me in because I'm unfamiliar with this. Do the schedules? Do they book out a schedule a year in advance, 6 months in advance, 2 years in advance, for either whether it's baseball or football? So, and I'm asking this because say we get to January and it's okay, we're having a season. Do they then just, okay, we have to hurry up and put a schedule together, we have to put districts together, we have to get this done in a week so everybody can start playing, or whether it's February or March, or is it already predetermined that this is what we're doing? Another
great question. I was a 14-year high school athletic director, and so I've been in this office now for 5 years. This summer, I communicated with anyone who had a set of ears that I felt that the people that were going to earn their money more than any people in our state in an athletic arena was the high school athletic directors and the assigners of officials to contests, because it's forever changing. And so to really answer your question, for the most part, schools that are on top of their game, they've probably are finished scheduling a year and a half to 2 years in advance. And what I mean by that is, let's use baseball as an example. I was the high school athletic director at Moberly High School for 14 years. And sitting here in the month of November of 2020, my high school baseball schedule for 21 and 2022 is already set. Now, maybe not 100%, but I know who my conference opponents are, and we did a switch out date, home and away type thing. And the other people on our schedule, usually we locked into a 2-year commitment, because if you're going to give up an away game, you want to make sure you get a home game in return, vice versa. So yeah, most people's schedules are set. The ones maybe not set quite as well are going to be the situations where we have an exiting athletic director and then an entering athletic director. And especially with what we've gone through this year, they're just trying to stay 2 hours ahead of the game. And so they may not be able to get to that baseball schedule until things slow down a little bit, which I'm not exactly sure when that's going to be. But for the most part, yes, schedules are going to be a year or two in advance. They're going to spend time canceling contests as opposed to looking for contests.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the districts are different because Well, baseball because they're redistricting, right?
Yeah, because we were looking at that earlier, and this was the other part to that is when we look at the MSHSAA website, the districts aren't set for baseball for the spring. Do you guys do that year by year?
Great question. It used to be a 2-year process. So when districts were assigned, they were assigned for the next 2 years. Our membership schools over time wanted to explore a better way to assign districts. Because what they were basically saying is, okay, so you're assigning our football districts for 2020 and 2021 off of last year's senior class that graduated in the spring. So why 2 years later are our kids playing in a classification because we had a big senior class that's left us and our enrollment is not really that. So what we did was we went down to 1 year. It's a year-to-year process. But because schools wanted it to be as accurate as possible, here's something that we did. We got rid of the senior class. So we only factor in the freshman, sophomore, and junior class from the preceding year. Why? Because they're going to be seniors, juniors, and sophomores, right? And that's really going to be the makeup of the nucleus of your squads. So that's one thing that we did. And for it to be as accurate as we could on the classification process, our schools wanted us to give it to them as late as we could so that it would be accurate. So now we actually assign districts 2 weeks after practice starts. So
Oh, wow.
Basketball and wrestling, we're about 2 weeks away from assigning, basically we're about a week away now from assigning their district assignments. Now, the crazy part of that is years ago when we did it 2 years at a time in advance, everybody would schedule then. You knew who was going to be in your district, so you'd try to schedule your district opponents. Now that we've gone to this new process, you can forget about trying to schedule your district opponents because you're not going to find out who your district opponent is till about a week or two before your contests start.
Wow.
Right.
So you just kind of have to let the district portion of it go and understand you're still going to be playing people that are closest to you geographically, enrollment wise. You can pretty much make a guess, but it's not an exact science anymore because they wanted their classifications and their district assignments to be more accurate in enrollment numbers as opposed to having it so far in advance.
And that makes sense because I was actually I was looking at this, doing research, looking at the school sizes. Both of my kids went to Fort Zumwalt East over here in St. Peter's. And I remember when my daughter, she graduated in 2013, the school was around 1,400 enrollment, something like that, I think it was.
Right.
I just saw the enrollment for this year was 939. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Right.
And as you were talking about that began to make more sense to me, and I understand why
Right.
they do it.
Yeah.
So baseball, we're in the same factor. It won't be till sometime in probably February, March before you district.
Probably
right?
March. Yeah.
March.
Late
Yeah.
February, early March. Yep.
So
And I could add something to that real quick, and it doesn't
Sure.
necessarily affect the larger schools. Another reason why we did that is when you're dealing with the smaller schools and roster sizes, schools that intended to play baseball or planned on playing basketball, but they couldn't get enough kids to come out for their team, and therefore they didn't have a team, they're not factored into the classification process. We've given it enough time where those schools can say, hey, Misha, just want to let you know, we had baseball tryouts the other day and we only had 7 kids come out, so we're not going to have a team this year. In prior years, that team would have been in the process of the classification, and then we would have just thrown them out of the pool. Well, that affects where a school might be classified.
right.
If they were the smallest Class 2 school, had we known that, they may have been the largest Class 1 school. Ask any coach in the state, would you rather be the smallest school in Class 1 or Class 2 or the largest in Class 1? You know what the answer is going to be. And so that's another benefit of delaying the classification process, because schools that don't have enough kids to field a team, now they can let us know before we even classify, and we get a more accurate classification.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Kenny, we're going to get you out on this. I was watching. I've umpired baseball for 12, 13 years. I've done some high school baseball and registered with MSHSAA. And I was looking down here, and you have a new program, Trade Your Stripes. And I was watching the video. Can you kind of give us a little bit about that? That was kind of cool.
Well, needless to say, our state, like any other state in every sport, in every part of the state, has a shortage of officials for multiple reasons. That's really irrelevant. The bottom line is we're trying to get more officials. And when you think about the characteristics that it takes to be a good official, translate that to people that are in the military. They're disciplined. They can make decisions. They understand rules. They are serving a greater cause than themselves. And so after a short time in this office, I felt that we could do something to reach out to not only veterans, but active military. Because we have some military bases in our state and people that could use that income as an additional supplemental income to the family. I like the fact that they have a lot of the traits that it takes to be a good umpire or a good official in whatever sport that they choose. And so we've really pursued those people. They get a free membership their first year. Obviously you've seen the video, and we want them to know that they're valued people in our society. And that there are things out there that they can do to stay connected to communities while still doing things that they enjoy doing. And it's gone real well, by the way. I've been very excited and proud of it. I would say over the past 4 years, we've probably picked up about 250 registered officials, which is really bigger than we have in most other avenues. We have a high school graduate program we currently do also, where every athletic director in the state of Missouri at the end of the spring school year can nominate a graduating male and female senior for a free registration their first year to be an official. So we're trying to do some things, but yeah, I'm very proud about the Trade Your Stripes program, and it's worked very well for us.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think that's a great thing with the high school program as well, because, you may be an athlete, right, that you're not going to another level, but you want to stay close to the game. You enjoy the game. You want to be part of the game, whether it be football, basketball, wrestling, volleyball, soccer, baseball, swimming, right? There's officials needed across the board. As you said, cross country, you guys just finished that up. I think it's a great way to stay connected to sports, and keep your involvement in the community, right?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough that I've played sport. I coach sport. I coached college basketball for 15 years, and I've been a high school athletic director. And I tell people all the time that after you're done playing, and everybody's at some point in time is going to be done playing, after you're finished playing, you only have two options to stay connected to the sport. One of them is coaching, and that's a great profession.
Yep.
And the other one is officiating, and that's not a profession. It's an avocation. There's a difference. Yeah. But it is a great way to stay connected. Your adrenaline gets going. You're excited. You're part of the game, and you have to make decisions that affect things. And what a great way to stay involved.
Absolutely. Kenny, man, thank you very much for being on the show.
Appreciate it. A lot of good information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And please, we hope you come back and see us.
I appreciate you having me. I've really enjoyed it. I love doing things like this, and it's also good for communities to hear what is going on, and they get a better feel. So anytime that you guys ask me, I will be honored to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You have a great day, and we'll
thanks a lot.
Catch up with you.
All right. Thanks, Kenny.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey, guys, we're back, and that was really good, wasn't it, Matt?
Yeah, get some good information from Kenny.
And we're going to be looking forward to having Kenny back and talking more about officials and just that overall scope of things. It was very informative. So, folks, hey, as we finish up here today for our inaugural show, we glad you joined with us. Matt, thanks a lot. We got some stuff going to be coming up here. Kind of tell us a little bit about some things you want to discuss and talk in the future.
Yeah, as we get moving here, we're going to break down some of the Missouri high school kids, some of the rankings that PBR has, some of the rankings that Perfect Game has, high schools that they go to, break down some of the schools, some projections where we think some of these teams will be, and some of the rising stars really in the state of Missouri.
Absolutely. And that's going to be a lot of fun, folks. We're going to bring it to you. Look forward to seeing more, and always remember, you pitchers, keep throwing strikes. You hitters, hit them where they ain't. That's the old saying,
There you
right?
go.
Hit them where they ain't.
That's definitely the old saying.
Everybody have a great day in the Lord, and we will see you next time.